This podcast is sponsored by AXA Farm Insurance. AXA offers tailored cover to fit your unique needs, whether it's public liability or protection for your family home, outbuildings or farm vehicles. Based in Athlone, the AXA Farm team of agri-specialists and regional managers work together to ensure you receive the seamless support you need. Switching to AXA is easy thanks to an innovative online service that enables you to quickly and easily find the best cover for your needs. For more information, head to AXA.ie. AXA Insurance Stack is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to the Farming Week, the news podcast brought to you by Agriland in association with AXA Insurance. I'm Stella Meehan and I'm joined by my colleague Charles O'Donnell to run through the top stories in agriculture over the past week. Firstly, Charles, we need to start with the tragic case in Kerry of farmer Michael Gaine, who Gardaí believe was murdered. Now, a breakthrough happened in the case over the past week. Can you bring us up to speed?
Yes, Stella. Well, last Saturday, Gardaí said they had declared a crime scene as part of the investigation into the disappearance and homicide of Michael Gaine. As we know, Michael Gaine was reported missing from his home near Kenmare on March 21st. The suckler and sheep farmer was last seen in Kenmare town the previous day on March 20th. The Gardaí said on Saturday that search operations resumed at lands in Carrick East, Kenmare the previous evening, so that would have been last Friday, on land which is understood to be Michael Gaine's own farmland, and that a crime scene had been declared. The first time that in the case that a crime scene had been identified. The Office of the State Pathologist and the Garda Technical Bureau were then called in to take part in the investigation. Later on Saturday, then, Gardaí confirmed that partial human remains had been found at that crime scene. This was after the examination by the State Pathologist's Office and a forensic anthropologist, and these investigations were assisted by the Garda Technical Bureau. Gardaí said that the searchers would continue to recover any further human remains. We understand that DNA analysis is being carried out on those remains to formally identify them, and while the results of that analysis have not been confirmed yet, the working assumption is that the remains are those of Michael Gaine. Then on Sunday, there was another development, which was an arrest. Gardaí said they had arrested a man aged in his 50s on suspicion of the murder of Michael Gaine. He was held and questioned at a Garda station in County Kerry. Gardaí also said that the family of Michael Gaine had been informed of the arrest and that his family were being supported through a family liaison officer. Gardaí then announced on Tuesday of this week that the arrested man was released without charge after questioning. Gardaí continue to appeal to the public for assistance in the investigation. The Garda investigation team can be contacted at Killarney Garda Station on 064 667 1160. The Garda confidential line can be contacted on 1800 666 111, or anyone with information can speak with any member of An Garda Síochána about the case. The developments of the last week come after 2 months of searches, initially as part of a missing persons case, and then subsequently as part of a homicide investigation after Gardaí reclassified the case in late April. After Michael Gaine initially was reported missing, there was a large-scale search operation supported by local, regional and national Garda units, other emergency services and the Defence Forces. Neighbours, locals and friends of Michael Gaine within the Kenmare community also took part. After over a month of little progress and no significant theories on what happened to him, Gardaí decided to upgrade the case to homicide, and at that point a formal criminal investigation got underway, with searches of Michael Gaine's farmyard, surrounding lands, water sources and roads. That search and investigation has now, as of this week, provided a clearer picture of what happened to Michael Gaine, and it's a matter now of seeing which direction the Gardaí go with the investigation.
Yeah, it's very sad for the family and friends of Mike Gaine, as he was known down there. They just want closure now at this point. I suppose there is progress in the sense where, 6 weeks ago, nobody knew where he had gone and there was no trace of him. So hopefully the investigators are getting that one step closer to establishing what exactly happened and hopefully giving some closure to, I know, his many friends and family down in the Kenmare area. Moving on now, and farmers took action this week by protesting in Dublin and elsewhere in Europe about proposals to change the format of the Common Agricultural Policy known as CAP. Charles, before we hear from some of the Irish farmers who were protesting outside the European Commission offices in Dublin this week, tell us what the proposals are and why farmers are concerned.
Yes, there were two protests on Tuesday this week on the future of the Common Agricultural Policy, both of which saw involvement from the Irish Farmers Association. The IFA and the Irish Cooperative Organisation Society, ICOS, jointly held a protest in Dublin outside the Irish offices of the European Commission, while Copa Cogeca, the EU farm organisation umbrella group that the IFA is part of, took to the streets in Brussels. The Commission is understood to be planning a radical overhaul of the EU budget, the multi-annual financial framework, as part of which the Commission is planning to merge its various funding programmes into a smaller number of funding pots, which would then be allocated altogether to Member States. Member States would then have to outline to the Commission how they plan on using that funding, and then the Commission would approve that. So this could not only see the merging of funding for both pillars of the CAP, but potentially also the end of ring-fenced funding for CAP altogether. And as you might imagine, this plan has been heavily criticised by farm organisations. So at the Dublin protest, the IFA warned the Commission against stripping away the CAP budget in favour of a single fund approach to the budget and to the MFF. The president of ICOS, Edward Carr, also stressed that CAP is a foundation of sustainable and competitive farming and the agri-food sector in Ireland and across Europe. The Dublin protest coincided with other protests across EU member states on Tuesday that were organised by various farming organisations. IFA Deputy President Alice Doyle led the protest in Dublin as IFA President Francie Gorman was in Brussels for the protests there. Doyle said any changes to the CAP would have huge consequences for the farming community in Ireland and across the European Union. She told Agriland at the protest that the changes mean that the CAP budget can be pilfered at any time and money from that budget can be used for anything other than just food production. Here's Alice Doyle speaking to Agriland.
The CAP budget has always been there since the time of the Treaty of Rome. It has been there to protect food production and to make sure that we have food security in Europe. And if that budget is not ring-fenced, there is always the risk that the money will be used for something else and that food production and farmers would not be supported in the production of that food.
Edward Carr, meanwhile, said that farming is not sustainable unless the industry is supported by the European Union. Here's what he had to say.
What I'm saying to you today is, if you're not going to support us as farmers, where is that food going to come from? We're proud of what we do. We want to continue to do it, and we want the next generation to do it after us. But unless you stand back and support us, it's not possible. We need our business to be sustainable going forward.
Now, the European Commission representation in Ireland did engage with the protesters. The Commission's representative in Ireland, Peter Power, told farmers that they will be heard. Speaking to the farmers at the protest, he said that farmers have always been central to the European project and that hasn't changed. He also said that the President of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, has made it clear that farmers are entitled to a fair and sufficient income. The protests in Dublin and Brussels coincided with the annual EU Budget Conference 2025, where the next long-term union budget was discussed. At the moment, it is understood that proposals from the Commission on the next CAP, as well as the proposals on the wider EU budget, are set to be announced in July. So this is something that we and the wider farming sector will have to keep an eye on.
Absolutely. It's interesting times ahead there for farmers, not just in Ireland, but across Europe, as we wait to see what the final decision will be regarding CAP and its budget in July. Now, there's rarely a week that goes by in Agriland where we're not discussing TB and its eradication. Minister for Agriculture Martin Hayden has been planning to revamp the plan to try and reduce the incidence of the disease and held an emergency summit with farm representatives recently. But farmers had concerns after that meeting, and now the Minister has further proposals. Charles, if you can outline them maybe to our listeners.
Yes, so a revised set of proposals to control the deteriorating figures for TB that you mentioned, Stella, is being presented to farm organisations today. A series of bilateral meetings between Minister Hayden and farm organisations are taking place now as we're recording the podcast, allowing for discussions on those plans. While it's unclear at the minute whether these proposals will be finalised in their current form, Minister Hayden has repeatedly indicated that he wants to move quickly and to get a new regime in place to control the spread of TB. Those bilateral meetings are a follow-up to the extraordinary summit meeting that took place earlier this month, in which an initial set of around 30 proposals were presented. The revised proposals being presented today include a number of notable changes to those presented earlier in the month. We don't have time on the podcast to cover all of them, But they do include a provision that TB herd risk information will be provided at the point of sale for female cattle aged over 18 months, as opposed to all cattle under the previous proposals. As well as that, a new system of TB herd risk categories are outlined. So the proposals are grouped into 5 headings, and each heading has several actions. Those 5 headings are: support herds free of TB to remain free, reduce the impact of wildlife on the spread of TB, detect and eliminate TB infection as early as possible, help farmers improve on-farm biosecurity, and reduce the impact of known high-risk animals. If we take the first one of those, supporting herds to remain free of TB, which is probably the heading with the biggest on-farm impact, what's being proposed is that there will be a 30-day pre-movement test requirement for dairy cows due to the higher risk associated with them, while suckler cows and males over 36 months can continue to be sold in the 6 months following a clear test, but require a 30-day pre-movement test after 6 months, and the post-movement test option will be removed. To help reduce spread through contract rearing of heifers, 1-to-1 contract rearing will be encouraged, and the Animal Identification and Movement System will be used to record the movement of contract reared heifers. All animals returning from a contract rearer will require a 30-day pre-movement test. In overhauling the herd risk categories, the department defines a high-risk breakdown as 3 or more standard skin reactors in the one breakdown. The current herd risk categories of C0 to C10 will be revamped into 7 categories, C0 to C7+. There will be an increased focus on high-risk breakdowns, and only these breakdowns will negatively impact a herd's categorisation. Only herds which have had 3 standard skin reactors in a single breakdown will be assigned a risk category. So C0 herds are those that are less than 1 year post a high-risk breakdown, while C7+ are clear for 7 years or more. The department also aims to ensure a consistent approach to the management of TB across all regional veterinary offices, and to set up a phone helpline for farmers who enter a breakdown to inform those farmers of what happens during the breakdown process. Now, under the heading of detecting and eliminating TB infection, the action on clear test requirements has been revised so that all high-risk breakdowns will require 2 clear skin tests at least 4 months apart before de-restriction. The first reactor retests will be carried out 60 days after the removal of the reactor animals off the holding, as is currently the case, and then reactor retests will be carried out at 60-day intervals until there is a clear reactor retest. It is only following a clear reactor retest that the clock starts on the 4-month period. So this revision means that there will be an overall increase in time restricted even if there are no reactors after the first 60-day retest. Under the other headings then, just to summarise, on wildlife, a support package will be developed to facilitate the fencing off of badger sets and for the installation of suitable water and feeding troughs for animals to prevent access by badgers. On biosecurity then, the proposals say that where a dealer or associated herd number enter into a breakdown, both will be restricted, and each must undergo 2 clear skin tests prior to de-restriction. The original proposals indicated that for relapse high-risk herds, no compensation would be payable for stock purchased from a herd which had a breakdown in the last 5 years. However, this measure appears to have been deleted in the revised proposals being discussed today. So those discussions, as I said, are taking place between the Minister and farm organisations at the minute. So stay tuned to Agriland to learn the outcome.
Absolutely. Some big changes there in terms of the approach on tackling TB. And of course, it is a scourge on the farming community in this country. Now, Charles, you yourself attended the Agri-Food Regulator conference this past week. As people will know, the Office of the Agri-Food Regulator was established to bring about as much fairness and transparency as possible in the food supply chain. Now, there were some interesting findings emerging from the Agri-Food Regulator at the conference, Charles.
Yes, Stella. So the Agri-Food Regulator held its inaugural conference this week where it presented the results of its first supplier survey. The survey found that 1 in 7 agri-food suppliers have reported being subject to an unfair trading practice, or UTP. The survey provided feedback on over 940 trading relationships. The regulator said that the results indicate an overall high level of supplier satisfaction with how buyers conduct their business. However, while there is a high level of compliance with UTP regulations, the survey found that some respondents still reported being subject to an UTP. The 2 most common issues being faced by respondents were being required to pay for loss or deterioration of a product and delayed payments. Lack of awareness on supplier rights and wanting to maintain long-term relationships were cited as the key reasons for suppliers not raising issues with buyers. And as well as that, less than half of the respondents were aware that the regulator's complaint procedure is confidential. During the conference itself, the issue of commercial retaliation came up, especially from the farmer representatives in the room. I spoke to the CEO of the Agri-Food Regulator, Niamh Lenihan, about this issue, and here's what she had to say.
The survey found that some suppliers that reported having experienced a breach of unfair trading practices, they were maybe fearful of bringing the practice to either the regulator or the business. What I would say is that obviously regulator operates a confidential complaint service, but also commercial retaliation is one of the unfair trading practices. So my message is, suppliers, please come forward in confidence. Don't even need to know your name.
Now, another topic that came up at the conference was the powers of the regulator, especially the powers that the regulator needs but does not have at present to carry out its work around obtaining market and price information. The chairperson of the regulator, Joe Healy, a former IFA president of course, told Agriland that with the powers the regulator currently has, it is not possible to get the full picture. It emerged in February that the board of the Agri-Food Regulator had written to Minister Martin Hayden to seek an urgent meeting. And the purpose of that meeting was to discuss the regulator's request for additional powers, which would allow for the regulator to compel businesses in the agri-food supply chain to provide price and market information. Healy told us at the conference on Tuesday that these powers are being sought by the regulator so it will be able to carry out its function. He said the regulator is straight and honest with food buying businesses and that he expects the same from them. In terms of whether or not the regulator will get these powers, Healy seemed confident, and he evidently feels that Minister Hayden and his department are looking into providing these powers and giving the regulator the tools it needs to do the job. So the conference this week was an opportunity for everyone to take stock of the regulator's performance so far. As a regulatory body, it's obviously still in its infancy, but there was a good deal of optimism in the room on where it's going. But we do wait to see, of course, if it will deliver for farmers.
Absolutely. Now, Charles, no more than TB, an ongoing issue for farmers over a long number of months, has been delayed payments, especially with regards to schemes such as Acres. But this week, let's talk about the BIS payments, because there was an announcement about BIS payments this week, Charles.
Yes, Stella. So the Department of Agriculture confirmed that 123,705 farmers applied online for the Basic Income Support for Sustainability, or BIS, and other area-based schemes before the deadline of May 15th, which was Friday of last week. This is actually a slight decrease on the number of farmers that applied for BIS and related measures in 2024, which was 124,274. Applications can still be accepted after the May 15th deadline. However, there will be a 1% per day penalty on payments for each day that the application is not sent in. The area-based application includes a range of schemes apart from BIS. These include the Eco Scheme, CRIS, CIS-YF, the Protein Aid Scheme, the Straw Incorporation Measure, the Areas of Natural Constraints Scheme, and the Multi-Species Sward Measure and Red Clover Silage Measure. There were also 33,951 applications received to transfer payment entitlements. And if a change made to a BIS online application leads to a farmer having insufficient land to use all of their entitlements, they will have the opportunity to submit a transfer of entitlements application up until midnight on May 31st. Now, May 15th was also the closing date for applications to the 2025 nitrates derogation. The department provided figures to Agriland which showed that 7,135 applications were received, including some manual applications. Manual applications are accepted where there is a change of entity taking place or where a herd owner is awaiting a herd number to be issued by the department. All other applications for the nitrates derogation must be submitted online. The figure for this year is a decrease on the derogation application number for 2024, which was 7,238, although this figure reflected online applications only. The department also provided a county-by-county breakdown of nitrates derogation applications. We won't go through every county, but Cork saw by far the most applications with 2,115. This was followed by counties Tipperary at 911 and Kilkenny at 547. Now, the number of applications for counties with less than 5 applications are not provided, so there were no figures available for Leitrim or Dublin. But apart from those counties, the fewest applications came from counties Sligo with 13, Roscommon with 15 and Longford with 26. It should be noted as well that these application figures may change as the process of validating applications take place. Finally, just to wrap up this update on farm schemes and measures, we'll just update you on some news from the tail end of last week, which was that balancing payments to farmers for their participation in Acres in 2024 have now started. The balancing payments in respect of participation in Acres in 2024 are worth €33.2 million and will be paid to 42,444 participants. Minister Hayden said this figure brings the amount paid to farmers for acres to 490 million since the scheme commenced in January 2023. While the 2024 acres balancing payments have started, advance payments for both the 2023 and 2024 scheme years are continuing to issue on a weekly basis as cases pass the validation checks, Stella.
And staying with farmer payments, Charles, milk checks for milk supplies in April were announced this week too. What was the trend for these latest round of milk prices?
Yes, so since the last episode of the Farming Week, we've seen a number of processors announce their milk price for April supplies. Starting with the most recent, Carberry Group announced on Wednesday that it was holding its price for April and that if that decision is replicated across its member co-ops of Bandon, Barryroe, Drinna and Lissaveard, it will result in an average milk price of 52.12 cents per litre. On Monday, Dairygold said it would hold its price, saying its quoted April milk price will be 50 cents per litre, based on the standard constituents. Dairygold said that its milk price equates to a farm gate price of 54.6 cents a litre based on the average April milk solids from its suppliers. At the very end of last week, Tirlán announced that it will pay a total of 50.08 cents per litre, including VAT, for April creamery milk supplies. This is consistent with the co-op's March price with no change. Tirlán's base milk price for April is 49.58 cents per litre, which is also itself unchanged. And the price also consists of a sustainability action payment of 0.5 cents per litre, including VAT, to all qualifying suppliers. Tirlán said the average price paid to its suppliers for April creamery milk, based on delivered constituents, will be 54.99 cents per litre. But elsewhere on the dairy front, the average global dairy trade GDT price index dropped by 0.9% this week following the latest auction event on Tuesday. The average selling price was €4,075 per metric tonne at the auction, which lasted for nearly 2 hours, during which there were 110 winning bidders and 15 bidding rounds. The GDT price index now stands at 1333, compared to the previous index figure on May 6th, which was 1344. There were some sharp falls in price for products which earlier this month had enjoyed a strong performance. Cheddar took a notable hit, with the sub-index falling back by 9%. Outside of that, index decreases for other products were more slight, although all products in the auction did decrease, with the exception of mozzarella, which saw a marginal increase, Stella.
And finally, before we go, I just want to mention that it was great to see Portumna in County Galway fully back and operational again in the past week after a temporary suspension, and hopefully things will continue successfully there. And also, Charles, one more story before we finish off the podcast this week. My second favourite airport in the country, after Ireland West Airport and Knock, of course, is Shannon Airport. But I might have a new reason to love it even more from now on, as it embraces the farming life.
Yeah, well, it was already my favourite airport, Stella, for
no
obvious
doubt.
reasons. Yeah, but Shannon Airport Group has begun grazing cattle on airport-owned land as part of its Farmland Biodiversity Enhancement Project. The airport announced the initiative to coincide with National Biodiversity Week, which runs from Friday, May 16th to Saturday, May 25th. The cattle are located at Thaddeus Hill, a 10-acre site near Shannon Airport that is said to feature a number of rare and endangered species of native grasses and flowers. After scrub clearances on the site in early 2024 by a team from Shannon Airport, traditional Drimmen cattle, recently recognised as a native rare breed in Ireland, were introduced for conservation grazing during the non-growing season. These cattle are considered ideal for the sensitive habitat due to their ability to thrive on rough pasture and their minimal impact on soil compaction. The project is led by the Shannon Airport Group Biodiversity Team and supported by local farmer John Quinlivan and botanist Phoebe O'Brien. This initiative is part of the group's wider 2023 to 2027 Biodiversity Action Plan and was developed with a team of environmental consultants. So if you want to read more about that project, you can check it out on Agriland.ie and the Agriland app.
Fantastic sight as you come in on a plane to the Green Isle. Maybe if you've been in far-flung areas and next thing you see the cattle as you arrive into Shannon Airport, it's a fantastic idea. Well, that's all we have time for on this week's episode of The Farming Week. Thank you for listening, and thanks to our sponsors AXA Insurance for their support as always. Please rate and review the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and do share it with anyone who you think might like to catch up on all the farming news. Until next time, from myself, Stella Meehan, and Charles O'Donnell, goodbye and take care.
This podcast is sponsored by AXA Farm Insurance. AXA offers tailored cover to fit your unique needs, whether it's public liability or protection for your family home, outbuildings or farm vehicles. Based in Athlone, the AXA Farm team of agri-specialists and regional managers work together to ensure you receive the seamless support you need. Switching to AXA is easy thanks to an innovative online service that enables you to quickly and easily find the best cover for your needs. For more information, head to AXA.ie. AXA Insurance Stack is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.